They didn't just cross my fence line. They carved a trench straight through my grandfather's resting place so their luxury golf course could drink, and the first time I saw it, the sunrise over Red Valley County turned that raw strip of dirt across my wildflower meadow into an open wound. Diesel fumes hung in the cold air, sagebrush lay uprooted, and half buried in a dirt pile was the bronze plaque with my grandfather Elias Ward's name, bent in half. I'm Grace Ward, owner of Ward Hollow Ranch. 3 years ago, I inherited 240 acres of high, desert range that Elias homesteaded after the war, the place he built with his own hands, house, barn, windmill, and the place where, in 2019, I scattered his ashes under a cottonwood grove at dawn. Just me, the wind, and the meadowlarks. No headstone, just the land he loved. Now there was a 10-foot trench right through that grove. At the edge of the mess stood Claudia Mercer, president of the Summit Crest Estates HOA, in a white SUV with a custom plate. She barely looked up from her phone as her crew chewed into my pasture. You dug a pipeline through my grandfather's grave, I told her, holding the ruined plaque. We followed every legal step, Ms. Ward, Claudia said, nails tapping. There's no registered burial here. Scattered ashes don't count. What she didn't know was that before I moved back, I'd spent 15 years as a water rights paralegal for the Front Range Water Court in Denver. I knew Western water law like some people know their favorite songs, and out here, whoever controls the water doesn't just water lawns, they write the rules. After a divorce at 49, burned out and empty, I'd sold my Denver life and come home to Ward Hollow Ranch. I threw myself into rotational grazing, risk-eating native grasses, starting a small beef CSA. The land started to heal, and so did I. Then Summit Crest Estates appeared. 2,200 homes dropped 3 miles east on former federal land. Fake Lake, 18, hole golf course, stucco mansions starting at $850,000 in a place that gets maybe 12 inches of rain. Their course alone used more water than 40 family ranches combined, drawn from Brightwater Reservoir, a federal reservoir built to irrigate farms, not keep putting greens neon in August. One spring morning, walking fence, I found orange survey stakes marching through Elias's cottonwoods. No call, no letter, nothing. At the Red Valley County Clerk's office, I found their trick. Summit Crest had filed for private condemnation, using an obscure statute that lets a private entity claim an easement if there's no economically viable alternative route. The notice had been mailed to a P.O. box I'd closed 2 years earlier. On paper, I'd been notified. In reality, they'd ambushed me. That Friday night, I walked to the grove alone. Orange construction fence circled wildflowers. Survey tape flapped over the spot where I'd poured Elias's ashes. I sat in the dust, cried until I couldn't, then wiped my face and called Daniel Rios, an old colleague and now a topwater law attorney. Danny, they're trenching through my grandfather's grave, I said. I need an emergency injunction by Monday. He didn't argue. He just said, send me everything. We spent the weekend building a case, improper notice plus federal protection for native burial sites. Elias was 1/4 from the North Mesa Band, so I tore through attic boxes for his enrollment card, land patent, military papers. On Monday, in front of Judge Harold Knox, a fourth-generation rancher who clearly hated what Summit Crest was doing but had to follow the law, Summit Crest arrived with 3 lawyers from Patterson and Colin Jackson. Their experts said there was no formal grave, argued jurisdiction, and then revealed they'd started digging Friday night before our motion reached the court. Stopping now, they claimed, would leave an unsafe open trench. Judge Knox looked sick, but he denied our emergency order. If I wanted to appeal, I needed a $75,000 bond one didn't have. When I got home, the trench was deeper, the backhoe parked on my cottonwood roots. The foreman came over, eyes sad, holding my grandfather's plaque in his gloved hands. First scoop, he said. I'm sorry, ma'am. Orders. For the first time in my life, the meadowlarks were silent. Back in my truck, knuckles white around that bent bronze, my eyes landed on the survey map taped to my mailbox. In tiny print at the top, it named the source. Brightwater Reservoir, allocation administered by Red Valley Water District. They didn't own the water. They rented it, from a public board, under public rules. And I speak fluent rules. The next weeks, I practically lived in the file room at the Red Valley Water District. Old binders, stale coffee, metal cabinets, my natural element. Buried in an amendment from 1987, I found the clause that changed everything. Any private entity using more than 500 acre-feet per year had to renegotiate its allocation every 10 years or prove conservation infrastructure equal to 15% of its draw. Summit Crest's own environmental statement showed their golf course using 620 acre-feet a year. Their last renegotiation? 2014. Their 10-year window had opened. They'd never renewed. In Western water law, failing to renew isn't a fine. It's forfeiting your seat at the table. Grace, this is huge, Daniel said when I called. They're hanging by their own paperwork. We filed a complaint with the water district and a second with the state engineer. Claudia hit back fast. An email went out to every Summit Crest homeowner. Local rancher threatens your water. I was painted as a selfish holdout blocking vital infrastructure, raising their bills, endangering their kids. My phone filled with unknown numbers and hate. At the grocery store, a woman in leggings with a Summit Crest logo bottle blocked my cart and shouted that her water bill had jumped 40% because of you. The manager had to walk her out while the whole aisle stared. That night, someone cut 40 feet of my fence. 16 cattle on the road by dawn. Hours of roundup, $1,200 in impound fees. No proof, just timing that screamed HOA. Then Patterson and Cole filed a $250,000 claim, blaming construction delays on my failed injunction. This is a slap suit, Daniel said. They want your money and your stamina gone. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., with my dog Rusty sighing on his bed, I dug deeper into Brightwater's history. The 1960s master plan said 60% of water for agriculture, 30% municipal, 10% private domestic. Summit Crest sat in that last slice, but used more than all other private users combined. I pulled the board roster for Red Valley Water District. 7 members, mostly ranchers and small town officials, plus one name that jumped out. Mark Mercer, feed store owner, elected 3 years ago, same last name as Claudia. In the minutes, every expansion Summit Crest ever asked for, Mark backed. Clubhouse expansion, irrigation upgrades, the pipeline. No disclosure that the HOA president was his sister. Water board ethics rules are brutal. You disclose family ties, or you taint every vote you touch. We filed a formal ethics complaint with the state. But I knew I needed more than law. I needed science and sunlight. So I called Dr. Nina Lang, a retired hydrologist who'd spent 30 years fighting overallocation in western basins. We met at a diner. I spread my research across sticky laminate, usage charts, well levels, hatchery records, board minutes. 600+ acre-feet for grass in a basin where wells are dropping 18 inches. Dr. Lang said, disgusted. The Painted Rock hatchery is barely keeping trout alive as it is. They're stealing from everyone downstream. Will you testify? I asked. Gladly, she said. Next, I emailed Ty Franklin at the High Plains Ledger, subject line, HOA golf course draining farm country. He met me in a truck stop parking lot. Cap pulled low, recorder ready. His story, Gated Oasis, Thirsty County, went viral in rancher groups and water forums. Suddenly, my inbox wasn't just threats, it was people asking how to help. Then came the real twist. Sitting over basin maps, Dr. Lang mentioned, most of Brightwater's inflow comes from Willow Fork Creek, up on the old Dalton Ranch. That land got sold to some out-of-state developer, didn't it? Families often keep the water rights separate. My pulse jumped. I pulled the deed. Sure enough, Dalton Ranch had sold to Skyline Ridge Holdings LLC, but buried in the paperwork was a separate item. Senior water rights to Willow Fork Creek, priority date 1904, retained and now up for renewal. Those rights would revert to the state in about 6 weeks if no one renewed them. I called Skyline Ridge's lawyer. They were liquidating. For $80,000, they'd happily sell Willow Fork's senior rights to clear the books. I had $22,000 in a pile of bills. But Willow Fork fed about 35% of Brightwater. In a drought, those 1904 rights drink first. Summit Crest's 2014 allocation drinks last. I launched a GoFundMe. Help a family ranch protect our water. No HOA names, just Elias, old ranch photos and the truth. Ranchers and strangers pitched in. One donor from Vermont wrote, Developers took my family's farm. Make them feel it. 12 days, $41,000. The rest, I pulled out of my herd. I stood in the pasture at dawn, counted 70 head of Angus born from 70 years of careful breeding, and called the auction barn. Selling 25 would hurt for years. Losing this fight would kill us forever. When the trailer pulled away, the pasture looked wrong, like a smile with missing teeth. That evening, neighbor Luke Navarro pulled up with a check for $6,000. No interest, no timeline, he said. Just promise you'll swing hard. Together, the donations, cattle sale, and Luke's loan gave me $85,000, enough to buy the rights and cover costs. On August 10th, at the county office, I signed papers making me the legal holder of 1904 priority rights to Willow Fork Creek, the main artery feeding Summit Crest. I walked back to the cottonwoods, pipeline humming under my boots, knelt where Elias's ashes mixed with dry soil, and whispered, "We control the water now." The leaves whispered like folded maps. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't the one being hunted. Claudia found out within days. Mark was overheard panicking on the phone at his feed store. The state engineer was auditing Summit Crest's allocation. Some rancher had filed on Willow Fork. 2 days later, Claudia's SUV rolled up my drive again. She tried charm, then money, offering $150,000 if I'd walk away and sign a gag order. When I refused, her voice went cold. "You have no idea who you're poking," she said. "I've ruined people for less." 48 hours later, state AG inspectors showed up over an anonymous overgrazing complaint, wasting a full day. Then, at 2:17 a.m., my hay barn burned. Flames 40 feet high, horses screaming, me sprinting barefoot across gravel to throw open the gate and watch them disappear into the dark. By dawn, $60,000 of winter feed was smoke. The investigator found accelerant. My trail cam caught a plate, less SUV. No one said her name, but we both knew. "Maybe you step back," Daniel said softly on the phone. "If I step back now," I told him, staring at the charred frame of my barn, "then everything she's done means she can do it again. I can't live with that." "I'm coming up," he said. "I'll bring a shotgun and bad coffee." And he did. On August 20th, state hydrologist Dr. Aaron Cho came to inspect Willow Fork Creek and review both my senior rights claim and Summit Crest's neglected allocation. Dr. Lang walked with us, pointing out healthy flow, native vegetation, no signs of waste. By mid-morning, Claudia arrived with her lawyers and brother Mark, trying to turn the inspection into an argument. Dr. Cho shut it down. Motives didn't matter, beneficial use and priority dates did. She reminded Mark that his undisclosed conflict could be headed to the Attorney General. He went quiet. When she left, she told me my claim would be approved once final paperwork was filed, and she flagged Summit Crest for immediate compliance. 30 days to show real conservation or risk suspension. I delivered the last documents to the state engineer on August 23rd. The clerk stamped them, and just like that, my 1904 rights to Willow Fork Creek were live. 2 days later, the Red Valley Water District held a public hearing at the Larkspur Community Center. Ranch trucks, Summit Crest SUVs, news vans. 200 people jammed into a room built for 100. At the front, 7 nameplates. One of them Mark Mercer's, now radioactive. Summit Crest's attorney called their failure to renew a clerical oversight, warning of 2,200 families losing water. Claudia took the mic, voice breaking on cue, casting me as a bitter woman bent on revenge. Then Daniel stood and called our witnesses. Dr. Nina Lang showed maps and numbers proving Summit Crest used more water than every other private domestic user combined, while downstream wells sank and the Painted Rock hatchery struggled. Luke Navarro testified that Claudia had tried to buy part of his ranch, and when he refused, his property taxes jumped 32%. 2 more ranchers stood and said it happened to them too. Finally, Ty Franklin laid out Mark's voting record, every single water decision favoring Summit Crest, not one disclosure of his sister's role. When Chairman Earl Hayes asked Mark if he had ever reported that conflict, the silence in that room felt like a physical thing. Mark mumbled about relevance. Earl cut him off, quoting ethics law. Disclosure isn't optional. He announced he was recommending a state investigation and treating every decision Mark touched as compromised. Mark stood and walked out. After a recess, the board returned with their ruling. Mark Mercer's resignation accepted on the spot. Summit Crest Estates allocation suspended, pending installation of water, reclamation, and conservation systems, estimated at $1.2 million. Grace Ward's 1904 Willow Fork Creek senior rights fully recognized and active. 90 days. That's how long they had before their taps went legally dry. The gavel fell. I didn't cheer. I just felt my shoulders finally drop for the first time in months. Claudia shot up, knocked her chair over, cursed us all, and stormed out into a wall of cameras. Within 48 hours, the bank holding Summit Crest's $4.2 million bond started asking where the guaranteed water had gone. Emergency HOA meetings turned ugly. Homeowners demanded to know why they hadn't been told about the expired allocation, the ethics issue, the bond tied to water they didn't truly control. Under pressure, Claudia resigned and moved out of state. Mark faced an ethics investigation. The new board voted to levy a special assessment, around $2,800 per homeowner, to install graywater recycling, drip systems, and rip up half the golf course. Protests, recall petitions, lawsuits between neighbors, all of it. And on my side of the fence, people showed up. For the barn raising, about 60 volunteers came. Ranchers I'd known my whole life, and to my surprise, a dozen families from Summit Crest carrying tools and coffee. A woman my age, Kendra Blake, hammered next to me for hours before saying, "We really didn't know what she was doing. We just wanted a pretty place to retire. We're not all villains." "I know," I said. And for the first time, I truly did. The new barn rose stronger, with a metal roof and solar panels. Insurance money and leftover GoFundMe funds covered what free labor didn't. Months later, one of Claudia's landscaping contractors was arrested on another burglary and admitted she'd paid him to scare the rancher, enough to indict her for conspiracy to commit arson. Meanwhile, Summit Crest installed its systems, cut its draw on bright water by more than half, and turned 9 holes of golf into native prairie. They even hired Dr. Lang as a consultant. I partnered with the North Mesa Nation to co-manage Willow Fork Creek, half the water reserved for cultural and ecological projects, half as a drought reserve for small producers. The state called it a model watershed. We started the Willow Fork Fellowship, a small scholarship to send rural kids to study hydrology. Now, at the Cottonwood Grove, the pipeline still hums beneath the soil, but it carries mostly reclaimed water to fewer acres of grass. Meadowlarks sing again. Rusty is gray around the muzzle, nudging my hand for breakfast. The new plaque for Elias Ward, set in stone and surrounded by wildflowers planted by tribal youth and volunteers from Summit Crest, reads, "He taught us water should serve the land, not greed." I touched the bronze, warm in the morning sun, and whisper, "We did it. We didn't just fight them. We changed the rules." The cottonwood leaves rustle like old survey maps, and somewhere downstream, clean water reaches ranches, fish, and fields that actually need it. So here's my question for you, now that you've heard all this. If someone bulldozed your family's resting place to keep their golf course green, would using the law to turn off their water be justice or revenge with better paperwork? Where do you draw the line between protecting what's yours and becoming the villain in someone else's story? And when, if ever, is it right to let the powerful feel the drought they forced on everyone else?